Hi, Dave Borton. Welcome to Roaster School. I'm Dave Borton, Mill City Roasters, along with
Joe Morocco from Cafe Imports.
Joe, what's your position over there?
I am one of the senior sales representatives and also the director of education. And you may see me at Roaster Guild events as well. I'm on the executive council of the Roasters Guild.
Very good. Like we said, welcome to Roaster School. We took a look at your feedback. We took a look at our own videos. Joe and I discussed it. And we're moving to a new project, Roaster School, where Joe is going to help us take a deeper dive on roasting segments. We want to give you the science, the principles, and the application behind roasting with your coffee roaster. Joe's going to be telling us items that are going to help you with whatever manufacturer and the roaster that you're working with. So whether you're on a North or a Diedrich, Joe's principles and science and application will help us improve our coffees. Joe's thought we'd start out today with turning point. Joe uses another term for it.
Turnaround sometimes is also used.
Yeah, so they're both applicable. But with that, that's the low point after you charge your roaster and those greens drop down on their migration north. So without any further ado, Joe, how about it?
Sounds good. Yes, as Dave said, you know, our old format, we spent time roasting a coffee and then you had the opportunity to buy into that coffee if you would like. However, we found that a lot of times I would get distracted by roasting or distracted by a question or trying to explain.
Or distracted by Dave.
Or distracted by Dave. So I was kind of only focusing on one thing really well at a time and shorting the other. So today we're going to focus on only one thing, and that is teaching you about the turnaround. So the turning point is that point in which when you drop the coffee into your drum, you see your temperature, if you're graphing your temperature, stop and turn around. So this point right here. I feel like I hear a lot of misconceptions about what exactly is taking place here. So I really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty and start with this. And then in our consecutive classes that we'll have together, we're going to move along the chain of how the roast develops, okay?
Joe, does this apply to every drum roaster out there?
This will apply not only to every drum roaster, but generally every roaster that is out there if you have the ability to collect your temperature data. If you're collecting your temperature data, I guess this is the first step. You want to have some kind of chart system, whether it's an actual graph that you are charting out on paper, or whether it is a system of boxes where you'll have your chart like this, and then you have your temperature change, and you have your time, and you can just write each one in each graph line. Can you see how wonderful I draw?
We have a lot to look forward to.
So then you can take every 30 seconds or every minute, whatever you want to do, and you can collect your data of what time is it and what temperature is it. And then you can write that on a graph. So this would be your temperature, and this would be your time.
Going this way.
That's right. So time ever marches forward, but your temperature is going to find a particular place along that graph. So whenever you put your coffee into the drum, what is happening is your drum is at a certain temperature. Generally on most drums, you're somewhere in the range between 375 and 425. Okay, it depends on your probes, it depends on what size drum, and it depends on how hot you want that drum. Okay, so let's just pretend this is 400 because that is a general range. Okay, at some point, when you add in the coffee, you're going to see the coffee is then going to pull against this temperature, and it's going to pull it down, and then they're going to reach an equilibrium. But I don't want you to think about it in being like your coffee is 400 degrees and then it drops in temperature and comes back up. All of this information right here, all of this is actually noise. It's not real, okay? What is really happening is your drum is at 400 degrees and your coffee is at room temperature, okay? Whatever temperature your coffee was when you put it into the drum. And what's really happening to your coffee's temperature is it is moving upward, ever marching upward from the time that you put it into the drum, okay? Unless you do something and it happens to fall stagnant along the roast somewhere, which we don't want to have happen, but it's ever marching upward, okay? So think about it in these terms. Now your relationships matter, okay? In life and in coffee. Your relationship between the temperature of your drum, the temperature of your coffee as you put the coffee into the drum, the size of your batch, so how much does that batch weigh, and the density of your coffee, okay? So if I have a drum that has the capacity for, just for our sake, let's say, well, what size drum do you want to work with?
1K.
1 kilo drum, okay?
And explain density.
If I have a 1 kilo drum, and I'll explain that density here in just a moment, a little bit more in depth. So here is a 1 kilo drum, and I'm going to put in about 80% capacity, which capacity, this equals 2.2046 pounds. So let's say we're going to shoot for 80%. Let's just say we're doing, let's just say 0.8 kilos. Okay? And then you can divide that number out at home for fun. I'm not going to do it in my head. So you're putting in your 0.8 kilos, okay? And that 0.8 kilo is starting at room temperature, let's just say 75 degrees, all right? If your drum has been sitting at 400 degrees for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, if it's stably at 400 degrees, then your turnaround on that coffee at 0.8 kilos, if all of these things are the same, that turnaround should be the same every single time that you roast that coffee. If all of your variables are the same, if your airflow is the same, if your gas is in the same position, if it's the same coffee, if it's the same temperature of your drum, same temperature of your coffee, and same weight in. If something changes for your coffee, then you know that there is something off. Something is off somewhere. Generally what I see is people are turning their drums on and trying to get to this temperature far too quickly because they think that they need to drop at 400 degrees, and so you get the drum up to 400 degrees and then you drop your coffee in. Well, that doesn't work because your drum hasn't fully absorbed all of that heat and held that heat at that temperature. So even though your probe may be showing you that you're at 400 degrees, the drum is still on its way of catching up with that. That 400 degrees is only at that site where you have your temperature probe, and the rest of the drum still needs to get hot, okay? Now this is where it starts to get a little complicated, is when you change which coffee you're dropping this amount. What I recommend for you, if you are new to roasting, is use your full charge, which is generally 0.8 or 80% of what the roaster manufacturer says that your roast is, because this gives you a lot of leeway to turn your gas up and not flatten it out. If you start with a full load and you get behind, you don't really have the momentum to get that forward for where you needed to go. So I do recommend starting out at about 80% capacity, and then I recommend with all of your coffees, try to keep that same charge until you really understand the fundamentals of your roaster.